starting.
Okay.
Okay, do we have citizens' comments generally? Yes.
Hi.
You can just tell us who you are and...
Yeah, Phyllis Coleman's 233 Glen Road. We have some concerns with upcoming development next to us at 235 and 241, where they're going to combine two properties and split the back half off and put it with Glen House Way, and then have a buildable full frontage something on Glen Road, which is Scenic Road. And I wanted to know what the planning board's role would be in this split up and the easements that we have on 235. And is there anything we need to do in advance? They're coming to you, I guess. He said something to the ZBA that we're almost ready to come, I guess, to the planning board if they haven't already.
Well, I guess the first thing is they would have to file an approval not required, an A&R plan with the planning board.
He's working on that.
Okay, and then if the A&R plan satisfies all the conditions of all the planning conditions, then the planning board would have to sign the A&R plan. That would then give them a buildable lot out of Glen Road. That's presumably. And then, if they wanted to construct something on Glen Road, which is a scenic road, they would have to come to the planning board for site plan review.
What happens with the easements that we have? Does that stay?
I don't know anything about the easements. Again, it would be, all of that information I assume would be in the A&R filing. So, I just don't know how they.
So he has to recognize that when he brings you the information?
Yeah, we'd get the submittal in and review it. Our civil engineering consultant would review it, the planner would review it, we would review it at a public meeting and either approve it or not, depending on whether it satisfied all the planning conditions.
Can you put conditions on the plan?
Not an A&R plan. It's either it's binary. It's either yes or no. It either complies or it doesn't comply.
There are already existing easements. Is that what you're saying?
Right, you have a couple.
That A&R would have to show those easements on the plan.
Okay.
And basically, what I understand would be happening, and he hasn't come and talked to me about it yet, would be that if he's divvying up or moving lot lines around, he would have to show how his lot lines are being moved around and how he's creating this new lot. He could not extract easements or eliminate easements that are previously existing.
Okay.
And as Al said, he would come, if he wants to develop a house on the lot, he's coming through site plan review.
Okay. Just for your information, this bill is at the Senator House or something. Because when you on this property, we have a terrible time because it's a mess, and it's been a mess, and it's invading us like crazy. So this somebody else has already got something going before the state, and you want to help push it along.
What is it, Phyllis?
It has to do with encroaching vegetation.
Oh.
On an abutting property.
Yeah, I mean, we have stuff overhanging our property, and it's prickles and poison ivy, and the area is full of rodents and all kinds of stuff, because it's been neglected for decades.
Was this the property that the brothers of Joseph or somebody like that?
The cult?
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't want to call them the cult.
The 12 tribes.
Organization.
Right, okay. They lost 235 to this fellow Smallman, who lives behind, and Smallman now.
I lost it.
Well, it was going to go into bankruptcy, and he bailed them out.
Okay.
And then
And they signed it over.
they still own 241, Glen, the Massey, or the tribes, whatever. And he made a deal with them to get control of that, I think by overpaying for 235. because he went way over what he said he was gonna pay. I think it's to get a good deal on it.
Okay, so there's a big history with this property, is what you're saying.
So,
The house, the wreckage of a house was condemned by the health department a year ago, and in June it's been a year, which means that somebody has to demolish it.
Uh-huh.
I'm still waiting for something to happen.
I can remember the sidewalk, where that was many years ago. Is that 10 years ago at least?
It's
Yeah.
still a mess.
Yeah.
But
I'm
it's
sure
much-
it hasn't
it's
changed, but
much,
worse.
much worse.
I'm sure it's much worse, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so bittersweet.
It's,
heaven.
because it's not woods, it's open where the sun can hit, and it's just, you need a machete to walk through back.
So this legislation would enable people to address that kind of condition with some
Yeah.
sort of enforcement action?
Yeah,
Because as I understand it, this overgrown lot has been this way for a long time, and nobody seems to be able to figure out a way to take care of it, and it's.
well, but Smallman owns it now, and he just refuses to do anything with it. And he doesn't care that we suffer from it. So, he said, oh, natural. Yeah, it's, there's a big difference between woods and what's there. And we can see the rodents going back and forth, and stuff like that. It's pretty bad. And lots of ticks too. So, and we spray every 3 weeks and it's still a mess. So, we're working at every angle we can just to get it cleaned up. We fully expect a house to be there. We just want it done properly.
Right. Well, those are the rules, yes.
I was just going to add, you bring up an interesting point, because I abut town land, and it also has a lot of rodents and bittersweet and other invasives, along with prickle bushes and things. And there is never a plan to build a house on it. So I would think if you enact something like this, you can't just apply it to residential
Probably not.
homeowners. You know, the town would have to, and that's a pretty big burden on the part of the town, because they own a lot of land that they can't really keep up. So I don't know how you could enforce something like that.
Well, we'll see what the House and Senate do. And, but I think it's different when you have a lot of houses. You know, my garage is only 4 feet from the current building. It's not like, you know, it's open space. And I think that makes a big difference. And they weren't talking about trees, they were just talking about, and it might be that the town has to go in and, if someone complains. But I look around town, I don't see that many places where it's as bad as what we're living with.
Right, yeah.
I expect a lot of houses, and I just don't see it.
What's the address again?
What?
What's the address again?
235 Glen. You're welcome to come in.
Just spray yourself.
What?
Just spray yourself before you get close to the property, because apparently just your description makes it sound like it's just alive with critters.
Well, you know, they know they're going back and forth, but they also bring ticks every time they go back and forth and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So these days it's a health hazard. And it's also bad if there was a brush fire over there, we put our first responders, because all that poison ivy going up and smoke would be terrible for them.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Phyllis?
Okay, thank you.
Those are the ground rules.
Yeah, okay.
Done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emmett.
Night-night.
Any other comments? Yes.
Yes. Hi, Ellen Freeman Roth and Stephen Roth at 55 Sylvan Lane. And I want to express a concern and ask a question. The concern is the clear cutting that happens pretty freely around town with really very few consequences. I mean, you know, telling a builder, well, now you're just going to have to wait to build since you didn't actually obey the law is really not much of a punishment. On my street alone, which is really known as a beautiful woodland street, 2 of the houses have been clear cut. The gentleman, the builder who clear cut 2 houses down from me has purchased the house next to me and has told me he intends to clear cut at least the full backyard. There's wetlands back there, so who knows if he'll abide by that. I think he sort of marches to his own drummer. And I know the house up the street from me was sold, and there are a lot of trees that appear to be marked for clear cutting as well. So I have a concern of the Newtonization of Weston. I mean, I think there's a reason that many of us chose to live here. That's my broader concern, and the question about what we can do about that to preserve our rural nature of Weston. And the second is, how do I do it specifically in my neighborhood, to ensure that this builder doesn't do the same thing next door that he did to the house he owns 2 doors down.
Just to add, so we've lived here, what,
22
years. What happened 2 doors down was there was a permit pulled, and this was many years ago, probably like 6 or 7 years. There was a permit pulled for just under 6,000 feet, clear cut, and that house has got to be at least twice that size.
Well, then he came with modifications to the house and he increased the size since he already had clear cut the property.
And our understanding is this happens a lot, that permits are pulled for just under 6, clear cut, and then other things happen. And I think there's a concern about, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but how does that happen? And that's another concern, not just for our street, but this seems to happen a lot in town.
Kind of like if you have a hockey game, if you really don't want there to be fighting, probably need to put some more serious punishment. Like if you're going to clear cut the property, you actually just won't be allowed to build it if you're going to break our rules.
So can
But,
someone
yeah.
address that?
Well, you're actually raising 2 issues, but they are linked.
Right.
And first of all, the planning board's very sympathetic with exactly what you're talking about. Take the second issue first. The second issue has to do, I believe, with how the building inspector interprets the residential gross floor area calculation. And so that's an interpretive issue that resides with the building inspector. And I won't go into the back and forth on what, various interpretations by various building inspectors of how they apply the calculations, but it is a game that we know about and that we've addressed and that we're continuing to address. But again, it's an interpretive question, so you have to get a person making the decision on board with the philosophy, and so that's a negotiating issue. The other issue, clear cutting, the planning board has addressed over the last 3 years, and there's been a lot of back and forth. The bylaw that came out of that back and forth was the best we could do under the circumstances. That's the one that was enacted at town meeting, at annual town meeting in May.
Right.
My personal suggestion would be, if you and your fellow citizens think that is not stringent enough, you might consider, a citizens petition bylaw amendment, which we would, if you had the requisite number of signatures, the planning board would have to hear and discuss.
Excuse me, what is that number?
What is the number, Joel, for a citizens
It's just
petition?
10 to get it on an annual town meeting warrant,
Yeah.
and 100 for a special town meeting.
Special town meeting is usually in the fall, 100 signatures. Annual town meeting is usually in May, 10 signatures. So,
And can I add something on this?
sure.
If you do have a citizen's petition, there is a very strong builder contingent within this town, and they can motivate, and they will motivate their people to get out and vote. So you can do the petition, and we can do the language. But if you want it to carry at town meeting, you really have to make sure people attend town meeting and vote in favor of this bylaw, because there will be a big pushback. Remember that these people make their money out of selling the town. It's the only industry we have in this town. It's the only thing we do, is we have a beautiful town, and builders like to come in and make a lot of money off of it. And people who aren't necessarily from around here like big, flat, open spaces. So if we want to preserve Weston, I mean, it's motivating the people to show up at town meeting and carry this kind of bylaw.
Can I ask another question? the idea about this interpretation, if I understood you correctly, does that mean that, so it's 6,000, is that livable space or something? So a garage wouldn't count and an attic might not count? Is that sort of how this happens?
Typically, exactly, it's what space in the building envelope counts and what doesn't.
Right.
And so the spaces, the common spaces that sort of get involved in the discussion of interpretation are spaces over garages and attic spaces. Those are the spaces that suddenly, a year, 2 years, 3 years after the building is constructed, magically turn into master bedroom suites or, family rooms, and then it kicks it over the RGFA trigger, then it comes to the planning board, but of course by that time, if the lot's been cleared, then it gets to be a negotiation, and sometimes those negotiations are not all amicable. But our ability to look at things and evaluate them ahead of schedule is obviously gone at that point.
And can you define RGFA for me?
Residential gross floor area,
Thank you.
and it's defined in the bylaw.
And it does always include the garage.
The garage itself.
The garage itself.
But it doesn't always include the story and a half built above the garage, which is not finished and is claimed it will never be finished and is just not counted.
But
Why?
has dormers.
But has dormers, windows, and everything else,
Right.
but it's not counted. But then suddenly, it appears right back after the people move in. And in the buyer's defense, a lot of times they don't know, they're kind of innocents. And speaking to what Al was talking about, is they can get difficult, the negotiations, because these are sort of innocents. They bought their dream house, and now suddenly the town, in the form of a mean old nasty planning board, is coming in there saying, no, you have to take down all these perimeter spotlights that you have. You have to bring in these very large trees. You have to do X, Y, or Z. And they're really caught holding the bag. The builder is long gone. So that's what ends up happening to us. And we hate to appear too heartless, although we are.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Also,
much.
we are about to review a house at 24 Sylvan, which you're probably aware of.
Right, that house, all the trees marked.
Yes. And we've already done a site visit there. When are we seeing that?
Next meeting.
Next meeting? In case you want to come.
And when is that?
The 15th of July.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for caring.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Really.
Someone has to, we're stewards of the future.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other public comments?